At 1:47 a.m., her text lit up my husband's phone. By sunrise, I had proof, a packed car, and a promise. I will not bleed for someone else's choices. I didn't go hunting for it. The phone glowed on the dresser like an open eye, and the preview was enough. 2 unforgettable nights. I stood there, barefoot on cedar boards, listening to the quiet of our house in Cedar Park, the hum of the AC, the little settling noises that had always soothed me. For 5 years, that hum meant peace. Now it sounded like a refrigerator hiding a smell. I pressed the palm to my chest and felt the engine of my heart thudding too hard. The message was still there when I walked closer. Her name wasn't saved as a name. Just an initial, a little fox emoji, a wink. The words were intimate in that lazy, careless way people get when they're sure the lie will hold. Thank you for the 2 unforgettable nights. A second bubble followed as I stared. You taste like you promised things. I didn't open the phone. I didn't need to. I walked to the bathroom and turned the water on low so the sound was something I could control. In the mirror, my face looked like I'd been up crying, even though I hadn't. When your body believes it's been betrayed, it supplies the evidence whether you want it or not. My hands shook. My mouth tasted metallic. I sat on the closed toilet lid and counted to 60, then 60 again, until I could breathe without the tight hitch that makes words break in the middle. I didn't wake Ethan. At 1:59, he turned over and mumbled for the blankets. I watched him tuck them under his chin like a child who trusted the night. Somewhere behind the nausea, a quiet voice spoke up. This is a choice. You get to decide how true it becomes. By 6:30, the sun ran a pale line across our kitchen table. 2 cereal bowls. The kids had slept at my mom's in Kerrville after a school play, which meant the morning was quiet enough for pretending. Pretending can be a cruelty. Today, it was a tool. Ethan padded in barefoot, hair messy, that easy grin like he'd just won a small game. You're up early, he said, kissing the air beside my temple. His phone buzzed on the counter. I watched him glance at it, then away, casual in a way he had practiced. You look tired, babe. Didn't sleep, I said, pouring coffee. He launched into his travel schedule. Dallas tonight, Houston Thursday, back by the weekend, team dinner at the Domain next week. I stirred my coffee and thought about how Brooke, my best friend from college, always seemed to know Ethan's work trips before I did. I thought about Brooke's habit of calling me when he was out of town just to see if I needed company. I thought about the way she once asked where we kept the spare key because she'd arrive a little early to surprise me with brownies. You okay? Ethan asked, reaching for the coffee. You're quiet. I'm listening, I said. And this time it was true. I was listening for the tiny slips you only hear when you stop trying to be comforted. He showered, he dressed. He kissed my cheek like a formality and left for a morning meeting he didn't usually have. The door clicked. The house went still again. I set the coffee down and leaned both hands on the counter. The choice stood up in front of me. If this is what it is, I will not be the one who breaks in public and then begs in private. If this is what it is, I will not be the cleanup crew for someone else's fire. At 9, I texted Brooke. Coffee at the little place off 183. She sent a heart. 10 okay? She arrived glowing. Brooke always glows, as if light prefers her. She hugged me like I had great news and sat with her elbows on the table, bracelets soft against the wood, talking too quickly about a podcast on the feminine urge to forgive. Her hair framed her face like a plan. You're jumpy, I said. She laughed, touched her neck, glanced toward the door. Me? No. Been up since 5. Pilates. I told her about the school play, about the kids at my mom's. Let our words jog around harmlessly. Then I asked her if she'd heard about Ethan's travel this week. She answered too specifically. Dallas tonight, she said, without missing a beat. Houston Thursday, She took a breath and added, "You told me last week, remember?" "Did I?" I watched her sip, eyes wide in performative innocence. There's a physics to lies. You can feel when the room tilts, when center falls somewhere not under your feet. I smiled and said nothing more. On the drive home, the lanes looked too bright. The sky had the flat blue of a hospital wall. I rolled my shoulders and decided out loud to no one, "You get the truth. You get it once." I wasn't supposed to be home. That was the point. I was supposed to pick up the kids from my mom's, stop at H-E-B, meet Ethan at 6. I drove back anyway. The cul-de-sac looked the same. Trimmed lawns, a neighbor's flag lazily lifting in no wind. The quiet had teeth in it. I opened the garage with the spare remote I kept in my purse. The house was cool inside, the kind of cool that keeps smells from spreading. I walked in as if I belonged there, because I did. A purse sat on the entry table that wasn't mine. A perfume, citrus with a sharp, sweet back note, met me in the hallway. The stairs creaked on the third step like they always did, and from the top of the landing I heard Ethan's voice, a half laugh. "Don't be so nervous." A woman's answer, light, teasing, pitched higher than normal when someone knows they're doing wrong. She has no idea. I didn't need to see. I did anyway. I stepped into the doorway and flicked the light, and the room tidied itself into edges. 2 people jumped like deer in a camera flash. For a slivered second, I watched both their faces run through every stage. Denial, calculation, plea. It's a mercy that time stretches in moments like that. It gives you room to pick your next sentence. "Hi, Brooke," I said. Stillness did most of the talking. She grabbed the blanket. Ethan opened and closed his mouth, no words prepared for an honest audience. "Don't come any closer," I said when Ethan took a step toward me. "You don't get to add sound to this." He stopped. Brooke started crying, quick, high wails like someone practicing grief. I wasn't interested in her tears. I walked to the dresser, took Ethan's phone, set its screen down, then picked up the purse in the hall and held it out to Brooke. "You forgot this." The anger I expected to feel didn't arrive. In its place, a steady, purposeful cold did. I recognized it. The same cold that makes you hold still when you remove a splinter. Ethan tried again, softer. "Ava, can we—" "No." I put the purse in Brooke's arms, and then I spoke in a voice even I hadn't heard before. "I have both your little texts. I'm taking the kids. I'll call a lawyer. You two can enjoy your little whatever this is." Brooke whispered my name like it might open a door. "Don't," I said. "Do not speak my name to make me smaller." I left the light on when I walked out. Sometimes illumination is the only defense you have left. Packing takes 10 minutes when you aren't packing your denial. 2 backpacks, a small suitcase for the kids, chargers, toothbrushes, the folder with birth certificates in the office safe. I took a photo of the purse on the entry table, the 2 coffee mugs in the kitchen, the text preview with the timestamp, the calendar invite for a team dinner that didn't exist on the company schedule. When I closed the trunk, the afternoon had shifted an inch toward evening. Ethan stood in the garage doorway, palms out, like someone trying to calm a dog. "Just wait," he said. "We need to talk where it's private." "This is private," I said. "It's also exact." He swallowed. I could see the boy he used to be, the capable young man he had learned to perform, the middle-aged stranger he was becoming. "What do I tell the kids?" he asked. "That you love them," I said, "and that you made an adult mistake." Across the street, Mrs. Gordon watered her lawn, eyes politely averted in the Texas way. "See everything? Pretend you didn't." I got in the car, locked the doors, and for a moment let my head drop to the wheel. Then I backed out and didn't look in the rear view until the stop sign. I drove north without a plan that looked like a plan. The highway opened into the hill country, Those scrubby greens and stubborn oaks that make Texas feel honest even when people aren't. My phone buzzed 3 times. Ethan, then a number I didn't recognize, then Brooke. I put it face down on the passenger seat and kept driving. By the time the sun slipped behind a set of low clouds, the gas light blinked. I pulled into a 24-hour station off US 183 in Lampasas, the kind of place where the light is too white and the cashier keeps a baseball game on at low volume. I filled the tank, the nozzle clacking when it reached full like a little permission to stand still. Inside I bought pretzels and water I didn't want. The man behind the counter looked up, then down, like he'd practiced both compassion and distance. His name tag said Nate. "Long day?" he offered. I nodded. "Long year," I said, and surprised myself by not crying. "Yeah," he said, not like a question. He pointed at the little coffee machine toward the back. "Fresh since 20 minutes ago, if you need it." I poured a cup and stared at the shiny black surface. "I found out something," I said to nobody, to the air in front of the napkin holder. And then I found out I can still make decisions. We ended up talking without names. He had that kind of presence, like a porch light in a storm. Not intrusive, not curious in the hungry way, just willing. "Some people apologize by making noise," he said, when I told him the outline without the nouns. "Others apologize by making room." I held the cup in both hands and let the heat give them back to me. "What if he asked me to forgive him by moving on like nothing happened?" I asked. "That's asking you to carry his consequence," he said. "You can do it, but I wouldn't call it forgiveness." I laughed once. "I have kids," I said. "They're sleeping at my mom's. I have to be the kind of mother they can keep." He nodded like that sentence had weight. "Then you are," he said. I watched the parking lot, the moths worrying the light, the low hum of the soda freezer like a meditation I didn't sign up for but needed. When I left, he didn't ask for a promise to come back or a conclusion written on a receipt. He only said, "Drive safe," like a benediction. Caraville, at night, wears the dark like an old sweater. My mom's porch light was on, as always, a small fidelity to the idea that home should be easy to find. She opened the door before I knocked, stood back when she saw my face, and only asked one question. "Inside or outside?" "Inside," I said. The kids were asleep in the den, a tangle of limbs and blankets, and the innocent breath that makes you remember the point. We sat at the kitchen table, and I told her the facts like I was reading them off a page. She poured tea, then didn't touch hers. "Your grandmother would have told you marriages survive worse," she said finally. "My mother would have told you men do what men do." She pressed the edge of the mug, eyes on the steam. "I am not my mother," she added, almost to herself. I waited. "You are not required to save anyone from their own acts," she said then, looking at me as if the sentence might break if she didn't hold it with her eyes. "Not even your husband. Especially not him." The relief made me tired in a way I wished I could sleep through. "He'll try to make it neat," I said. "He'll try to apologize in a way that hires me back as his cleaner." She nodded. "Then don't take the job." Morning came the way mornings do even when the world tilts. Cartoons too loud, waffles in the toaster, my son asking if we could go to the park later, my daughter demanding a braid that would hold even if I run fast. The ordinariness steadied me more than any speech. I texted Ethan, "I'll speak to a lawyer today. You can coordinate a time to see the kids this weekend. We will keep it civil." He sent paragraphs. I read none of them. Told him I would respond after I spoke with counsel and meant it. Around noon, I called a firm in Austin a friend had used last year. The intake paralegal had the voice of someone who had heard every version of this story and still believed in people. "We can get you on the docket for Friday," she said. "Are you safe?" "Yes," I said, and meant it in the way that counts more than locks. Driving back toward Austin that afternoon, the hill country opened again, and the road felt like a sentence I could finish. I didn't have a line for forgiveness. I didn't have a plan for next Christmas. I had a folder of documents on the passenger seat, 2 backpacks in the back, and the precise knowledge that I could walk into a room with fluorescent lights and speak in complete sentences. I didn't listen to music. I wanted to hear the tires and the air. A hawk traced a lazy circle over a field, uninterested in how humans complicate the simple things. When I pulled into our cul-de-sac, Ethan's car was already there. He was sitting on the porch steps, elbows on knees. That pose of performative humility men learn from movies where redemption happens in time for the credits. I parked at the curb and took a breath that tasted like dust and honesty. He stood when I got out, hands empty, palms open. "Ava," he said, and my name sounded like a plea he'd only just translated. "I made a mistake. A huge—" "Don't," I said softly. "We're going to do this in steps, not speeches." He shut his mouth, swallowed whatever script he'd prepped. "I'll move out tonight," he said, surprising me. "I'll give you the house. I want you and the kids to be okay." He looked up at our windows like a man measuring a life he suddenly realized had weight. I didn't answer with gratitude or rage. "We'll let the lawyers talk," I said. "You can see the kids Saturday." He nodded too quickly. Brooke's car wasn't in sight. The relief was petty and real. That night, after the kids fell asleep in their own beds for the first time since the detonation, I stood in the doorway of our room and studied it like a crime scene already processed. Sheets clean, dresser aligned, a laugh so loud you could hear it. I slept on the couch, not out of martyrdom, but to give the space a night to air itself out. The ceiling fan swirled the same old air. Somewhere, I thought, a woman is writing another text she shouldn't. Somewhere, I thought, a man is pretending that wanting is an argument for doing. And somewhere, I knew, a woman is packing a small suitcase in the exact shape of her patience. I closed my eyes and did not speak an apology to the ceiling. I said my own name, once, and let it mean something that didn't have to include anyone else. Friday in Travis County runs on fluorescent certainty, numbers, time slots, file folders with colored tabs. The courthouse air felt colder than outside, like justice needed the temperature to stay still. My attorney, a woman with a quiet voice and a spine you could set a watch by, laid out the sequence. We would state the grounds without theater. We would request temporary orders that protected the kids and stabilized the home. We would not negotiate in hallways with men who had just remembered they knew how to look sorry. Ethan arrived 5 minutes early in a navy suit that used to look like competence. He carried nothing in his hands, which told me he wanted me to notice how empty they were. When his lawyer suggested a conference room, mine shook her head once. "Inside," she said, and we waited for the clerk to call our names like a bell. There's a human urge to narrate court scenes like movies. In truth, it's mostly reading. My lawyer read the petitions. Ethan's lawyer read replies. The judge, a woman with a wedding band and the face of someone who has learned not to react, asked only a few questions and anchored every answer to a date. When it was Ethan's turn to speak, he stood, cleared his throat, and did not look at me. "Your Honor," he said, "I intend to move out today. I would like Ava and the children to remain in the house. I'm prepared to sign over my interest in the property and the savings accounts. I'll keep my retirement. She can have the car." He glanced up at last, and the look wasn't quite apology, not quite strategy. More like a man trying to swap currency at a border he didn't expect to cross. The room held a breath. Even his attorney didn't mask the surprise very well. My lawyer wrote something on her legal pad, 2 numbers, a check mark, then nodded once, slow enough to register that she would verify every comma. The judge asked if I had anything to add. Only that we'll keep the schedule civil for the kids, I said. My voice sounded like it had learned a new calm. Afterward, in the hallway where the floors have seen every kind of shoe and every kind of ending, Ethan approached like a person asking for permission to approach. "Thank you," he said, which was not the sentence I expected, "for not burning me down in there." "You did that part yourself," I said, and surprised myself with how uncruel it came out. "We'll talk logistics through counsel." He nodded. "There are things I want to tell you," he tried. "There always are," I answered. He put his hand to his forehead like maybe a headache could explain a collapse. I didn't reach for him. When I pushed open the glass door and felt Austin heat rise up the courthouse steps, it felt like an honest climate after a refrigerated room. We moved like people at an airport, separate gates, overlapping maps. He packed 2 duffels and a box of shoes. I labeled a bin Kids Winter, though winter in Central Texas is mostly an idea. He sent me links to therapists and co-parenting apps, and I almost laughed at the efficiency of a man trying to spreadsheet contrition. At night, I lay on the couch again and listened to the house relearn its sounds. In the morning, I made pancakes that were a little too thin and poured maple syrup that was a little too generous. Normal makes a convincing case when you feed it. The house, though, was a shell I didn't want to keep, even if the deed said I owned it. A month later, I signed a lease in San Antonio with a back porch and a tiny fig tree that looked brave. Friends said the Riverwalk. I said the H-E-B on Nogalitos because that was the kind of landmark that meant a life. I boxed up what mattered and filled the rest of the space with a lightness that surprised me. On the last afternoon in Cedar Park, I found the kind of box you don't plan to find. One of those banker's boxes everyone swears they'll organize one day. Old college programs, a cracked photo frame, a shoelace, 3 ticket stubs, and then letters. Not many, and not the dramatic kind with perfume and tears, but steady, ordinary pages with dates from our senior year. The handwriting wasn't Ethan's. The return addresses were campus mailboxes. The name on the envelopes made my mouth go dry. Brooke Jensen, the then version of her, the girl who wore black eyeliner and argued about bands. I tucked the bundle into a tote, told the movers I'd bring the odds and ends myself, and drove away from a cul-de-sac that already felt like someone else's suburb. In San Antonio, the first night was a tangle of extension cords and pizza boxes and my daughter asleep in a nest of stuffed animals that made her look like a pale explorer surrounded by friendly bears. I waited until the dishes were stacked badly in the sink and the kids were out, then sat at the kitchen table with the letters like a person sitting with a stranger who might be family. They weren't love letters exactly. They were what people write when they're almost something, and then class schedules and misunderstandings and pride make them not. Brooke wrote about a lab partner and a late bus, and the way Ethan made everything look easy. She wrote about a coffee she didn't intend to share, and a kiss I didn't need to picture to understand. She wrote, weeks later, about not hearing back. The tone grew brittle in the last 2. It was the voice of someone trying to insist hurt is a choice other people are making about you. The postmarks all fell before the week I met Ethan at a mutual friend's barbecue, where someone overcooked chicken and we laughed anyway. The letters weren't proof of anything except time doing what time does. Still, something bothered me. One envelope had a tear across the back that looked like it had been opened and resealed with Scotch tape meaner than the original glue. I slid my thumbnail under it again. Inside was a note in a neater hand, not Brooke's. "You need to leave my son alone. He's better off. Find someone else." No signature, no address. The paper smelled faintly of a drawer. There are truths you don't want to carry alone, even if they don't change the present. I called Ethan's mother, Linda, on a Saturday when the kids were at a birthday party, and the apartment had that quiet of held breath. Linda lives outside Bourne in a house that breathes cedar and casseroles. She answered on the second ring, and her hello had that warning bell of a woman who expects her son to be in trouble and hopes it's not police. "It's me," I said. "Ava." Her inhale softened. "Honey," she said. "How are you?" We met at a bakery that bakes bread like confession. I put the letters on the table like cards. She didn't touch them at first. When she did, she sorted them the way a mother fingers baby clothes she kept longer than she meant to. I slid the taped envelope toward her. Her face did something I couldn't read. "Linda," I said gently, "did you ever—" She closed her eyes for a moment and then opened them with the quiet decision of someone who knows the bill has come due. "My mother did," she said. "Your grandmother?" "Yes," she answered, and the word held a decade of fights I hadn't witnessed. She believed that Brooke would ruin Ethan's focus. She went through his mailbox when he lived at home that last semester. She told me she was protecting him from a mistake. I told her mail is federal and ethics is older than the post office. She gave a small, humorless laugh. We argued. She taped one back together poorly. Ethan never knew. He thought the girl just stopped writing, and that meant something about him, about his luck, about the way women leave. She pushed the letters back to me and placed her hand on top of mine in a gesture that wasn't absolution and wasn't excuse. "I am sorry," she said, "for what my mother did, for what happens when people inherit bad stories and call them fate. Grief isn't only for what you lose. It's for the parts of the story that could have been simpler." I drove home along I-10 with the letters on the passenger seat like a map that only works if you go back in time. At a red light, I texted Ethan. "I found some of Brooke's college letters in an old box. There is a note in one in your grandmother's hand. I thought you should know this part of your story. 3 dots, then nothing. Then, can I call?" I told him to come by when the kids were at school. He arrived with no suit and no rehearsed humility, just a fatigue around the eyes you get when you are catching up to yourself. I showed him the envelopes. I watched the moment a person finds out there was a hinge on their past they didn't know about. He didn't cry. He didn't apologize to the air. He just sat very still and said, "That explains more than I wanted to." He traced the taped flap with one finger like it might unstick by will. "It doesn't change what I did," he said, looking up at me as if I might do him the favor of disagreeing. "No," I said, "it doesn't." We sat in the small kitchen with its brave fig tree outside the window and the sound of a neighbor's dog telling the world it, too, existed. "I'm trying not to ask you to carry this," he said finally. "Good," I answered, and wished him well without having to say the words. He left the letters with me. Some things you keep not because you want them, but because you understand what order they go in now. I expected to avoid Brooke forever, the way you avoid a freckle you watch too closely. She texted, "I heard you moved. Can we talk?" I typed no and didn't send it. Then I typed, "I'll give you 1 hour in public. Don't ask me to do your absolution." We met on a Tuesday when the sun made lying look more expensive. She looked like someone who had slept and then scrubbed her face too hard. "I loved him before you," she said without preface, a statement meant to claim a higher moral ground like seniority. "You wrote to him before me," I said. "That isn't love's statute of limitations." She blinked. "I'm not here to fight over math." I put the tape note on the table. "Your ghost was kept alive by someone who thought control equals care," I said. She read it and exhaled in a way that deflated both grievance and pride. "I told myself he abandoned me," she said to the tabletop. "It was easier to break into your life later if I made him the original sinner." She looked up. "I am sorry, Ava." The sentence sat there, unadorned. "I don't need your sorry," I said. "I needed your absence and your honesty in the first place." She swallowed. "I will not contact Ethan again," she said. "That's good," I answered. We finished our waters like it was communion for people who weren't in the same church. San Antonio grew around us. The kids learned a new park and new shelves at the library. My daughter's braid held even when she ran fast. I worked at the dining table and discovered that the afternoon light in this apartment makes even bills look less rude. On a Thursday near dusk, I found myself driving north on 281 without intending to. Habit or hunger, or the way a certain stretch of road holds a memory, led me past the turnoffs, out where the hill country unrolls itself like a steady thought. Lampasas wasn't on the plan. I pulled in anyway. The gas station was exactly as it had been, the light wider in my invented memory than in real life. Inside, a different baseball game murmured the same language of innings and patience. Nate looked up, and his eyes did the quiet recognition I trust most. No performance, just a man remembering a person at a counter with hot coffee and cold hands. "You made it," he said, like we'd agreed to meet after a storm. "I moved," I answered. "San Antonio, fig tree, small porch." He nodded like those were coordinates he could put on a map. "How's the year?" he asked. "Less long," I said, and we both smiled at the ledger of it. We didn't do the post-mortem. He brewed a fresh pot without telling me it was for me. I told him I'd learned that forgiveness and access aren't synonyms. He said he'd learned that some people tell the truth better when they're not in the same room with the person they hurt, which is why letters exist, and also why they get stolen. I told him I was learning to trust the quiet parts of the day more than the dramatic ones. He gestured at the humming refrigerator bank and said, "We make a lot of quiet here." A woman came in for cigarettes and a lottery ticket and left with a bag of ice. The door chime made its little announcement about arrivals and departures. I looked at the clock and didn't do the math on how long I'd been okay. When I left, he stepped around the counter for the first time. Not to hug me like a movie scene, but to fix the wobbly lid on the outside trash bin that had been banging in the wind since I pulled up. He pressed it flat, satisfied by a small order achieved, then tipped 2 fingers in a mock salute that belonged to no particular branch of anything. "Drive safe," he said again, as if the phrase were a blessing and not just advice. "I am," I said, and meant both halves. The sky over the hill country was doing that late light that makes even scrub look gold. I rolled the windows down and let the warm air complicate my hair. The road unwound. The fig tree would be dark when I got back, a little green soldier waiting for morning. The apartment would smell like the candle my daughter insists smells like cake, and I would label another box "Donate," just to prove to myself that I could keep choosing what stayed. I thought of the taped envelope sitting in the drawer, evidence of a theft that had written a season of someone else's life and then tried to write mine. I didn't feel like a saint or a victim or a heroine. I felt like a woman who had stopped bleeding for someone else's choices and learned that sometimes quiet is not what's left after the noise. Sometimes quiet is the sound of your own name answering when you call.